This is Corporate Warrior, high-intensity training, lifestyle, and business with Lawrence Neal, helping you improve your health and physique, become a great personal trainer, and start and grow your hit business.
Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to CorporateWarrior.co. My guest today is the late, great Greg Anderson, except he's not my guest. He's Dave Durrell's guest from Rock Solid Fitness, Florida. After I interviewed Greg's wife, Anne-Marie Anderson, I tried to find every useful resource on Greg I could possibly find online and add it to the show notes to really create a central resource where you could all consume content from Greg that he's created in the past. Fortunately, high-intensity training enthusiast and listener of mine, William Lee, thank you, William, kindly sent me an amazing podcast, or this podcast you're about to listen to, with Greg, which Dave recorded on High Intensity Nation. And it's so good, this podcast, that I decided to republish it with Dave's permission on my show, just to get this great wisdom out there. And this podcast is just incredible, and I think it's just everything the high-intensity training enthusiast loves in a hit type of podcast. For example, in this podcast, Greg and Dave discuss tons of stuff around high-intensity personal training, including how to manage the transition from an open gym to a one-on-one personal training facility. There's a really funny story around that. How to retain clients at Ideal Exercise. They've been able to, on average, retain customers for 8 to 9 years, which is very impressive. How to filter out new clients and self-select for clients that are going to be a good fit for you long-term. How to communicate with new clients effectively and run a successful introductory workout. And Greg credits Anne-Marie for her perhaps superior ability to build rapport and sell effectively. And how Greg used to handle questions regarding diet. Furthermore, there's lots of discussion around high-intensity training protocols. Greg covers all sorts of classic Nautilus machines, how he and Anne-Marie retrofitted machines for optimal function, how they have experimented with lots of different training protocols, volume and frequency, and the results that they've seen, and much, much more. This is an excellent podcast from Dave and so rich with high-intensity training material. Greg is also absolutely hilarious, and there are a number of moments during this episode where I absolutely laughed out loud, and I had to actually rewind the episode just to hear something again and laugh twice. Greg's wisdom, character, and sense of humor is enormously endearing, and I can completely appreciate why he was so well liked and why he is dearly missed. And for the show notes, please go to corporatewarrior.co/Greg Anderson. And now, without any further ado, I give you the late, great Greg Anderson.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is Dave Durrell from HighIntensityNation.com and HighIntensityMuscleBuilding.com, and we have another high-intensity interview in our series. And our guest today is somebody that I'm going to be excited to hear from because I have not spoken to him before, although I've heard a lot about him before. And this is none other than Greg Anderson. And for those of you who have not heard of Greg, he runs a great training facility in Seattle, Washington called Ideal Exercise and is a zealous advocate of high-intensity training. And although he and I haven't spoken, he has spoken of very highly by several people that I know and some of the people I've interviewed for this series. So, Greg, welcome to the call.
Well, hi, Dave. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's pleasure is all mine, Greg. I know you're going to give us some great information. I'm really looking forward to it. So let's get right into it. I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, such as when you started, training way back whenever that might have been, and what it was that kind of got you interested in it, and then how you ended up becoming interested in high-intensity training.
Well, believe it or not, I have training records that go back to 1978. I was 12 years old at the time. And I was, messing around with barbells in the basement, as kids do. My dad had a set. And, I was really never the proverbial 98-pound weakling. I reached my adult height of 6'2" when I was 13 years old. So obviously I was attracted to sports and wanted to train to prepare for football. And I was really fortunate that I had access to a racquetball club that housed a universal gym. And then I had my barbells at home, and I had talked to the manager of the racquetball club, and I said, look, could I bring my barbell and a couple of dumbbells down here so that I can have everything all in one place? And he agreed, as long as I allowed the other members to use my equipment. And I was training along as happy as could be 3 days a week. And then one Saturday, I walked in for my regular workout, and everything was gone. I mean, you got a bad feeling in the pit of your stomach when something tragic happens. My weights were gone. And then I saw a banner where the Universal machine had been, and it said, Nautilus is coming. And I'll tell you, it was like that scene in Monty Python when the Holy Grail, lights up the sky and the angels sing, Nautilus is coming. And I ran home. It was about a mile from the place. It was probably the fastest mile I'd ever run in my life. And I spent the rest of the evening leafing through muscle magazines, looking at pictures of Mike and Ray Menser using Nautilus equipment. And about 10 days later, the equipment arrived, and I was hooked. I was hooked on high intensity from the very beginning. Loved the idea of training hard into failure. Didn't know anything about the efficiency because, I'm a 13-year-old kid. It's not like I had a job. I had a lot of time. But I just loved the feel of the equipment. I loved the feel of the intensity. And as it turned out, it worked well in my preparation for high school sports.
That's fantastic. So it sounds as though that was pretty much it. You just got into high intensity with the arrival of that Nautilus equipment, and then did you continue to play football at that point, or how'd that end up going?
Yeah, I played through high school, and I was on the team briefly at the University of Louisville. I won't ever claim to have played. And then I went on to play semi-pro ball for several years.
Wow.
But when the Nautilus arrived, Ellington Darden had written a little book there's still copies around there floating around called Conditioning for Football, the Proper Strength Training Approach. And being a kid, I stole it and took it home, borrowed it, took it home and read it, I'm going to guess 15 or 20,000 times, and then found my way into the bulletins. And I was actually training clients at that Nautilus facility while I was still in high school. I started taking clients and being paid for it when I was 15.
Wow, that's interesting. Given what you're doing now, you got an early start on that.
Yeah, I had a high school reunion a few years ago, which I was unable to attend. But one of my old classmates got my wife on the phone and said in his Kentucky accent, "That boy left the weight room since he was 10 years old," and I guess that's true.
How about that? Wow. So that's interesting. Now you mentioned Mike and Ray Menser. It sounds like they were an influence on you as far as your training beliefs and philosophy goes. And you mentioned Ellington Darden. Who else might have been an influence on you as far as your training beliefs and philosophy at this point?
Well, Arthur Jones, obviously. Developing the equipment and the bulletins were so hard-hitting. And I'll tell you, El Darden, he may not remember this, but when I was a high school kid, I used to pester him at his office. I would call him a couple times a month, and he was always super generous with his time. Mike Menser and I became pretty good friends throughout the years. And I did go through the super slow Exercise Guild certification, was certified a master instructor in 1994 by Ken Hutchins. And Ken's had an influence on me in a couple of ways. He's taught me a lot about the mechanics of exercise and a lot about how to not get along with people. I'm just kidding if Ken's listening. That's a joke. There have been a few other guys. One of my best friends is a gentleman named Bradley J. Steiner, who's written for the bodybuilding magazines. I think he probably wrote his first article for Strength and Health on a stone tablet. I kid him about that. He actually upgraded to a computer just in this decade. He was banging it out on an old typewriter. And then more recently, my good friend Doug McGuff and John Little, the authors of Body by Science, who have put out some fantastic material. And I've known Doug for many, many years. He and Mike Menser and I actually hosted a seminar here in Seattle in 1998. So we've been bouncing ideas off one another for a long time.
Yeah, that's interesting. The two of the names that you mentioned jumped out at me. Number one, I have right now on the front seat of my truck a CD that is probably from that seminar that you mentioned with Mike Menser on there. I know it's from 1998, so I bet you it's from that one if somebody was recording it. And number 2, Bradley Steiner. I remember when I was a kid, I used to, I'm probably older than anybody listening to this call and definitely older than you, and I read some of his articles in Strength and Health. So I don't know if he used the stone tablet or not, but I was definitely reading them by probably by candlelight at that time. But yeah, he was always really good writer.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from him, I've been a student of his martial arts system for 15 years. And what I've really gotten from Professor Steiner is more a sense of how to work with people and how to teach in a very non-threatening, non-drill instructor-like manner. Obviously, he's one of the giants in the weight training field, although I think some of the young guys don't know who he is. But I highly recommend anybody who can find his old books, particularly the Hard Gainer's Bible, Complete Guide to Effective Barbell Training. I mean, this is wonderful material. And even if you're a machine-based trainer or trainee like myself, the principles are pretty much all the same. He's into brief, infrequent, hard workouts. In fact, he refers his martial arts students to me for training.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's so big when you're a trainer. If you can't connect with people on more than just a technical level with the exercises, then you're going to have a really tough time motivating them.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Now tell us, I'm quite interested to hear about the history of your facility, Ideal Exercise, out there in Seattle, kind of how it came into being and when you opened, and just what the story is with your place, because all I know about it is how well equipped it is and that you train a lot of people there.
Well, let me tell you, this has been a long, strange journey, and anybody who really wants all of the details, there's an article that's available online if you just Google it, entitled The Ultimate Retrofit, which details the trials and tribulations of what my wife and I went through. Essentially, I moved to Seattle in 1989, and I had worked at a couple of Nautilus facilities here in town, and it was great because I was constantly being fired by the sales managers because I was training people too hard. God, you're working them too hard. They're not going to want to come back. We want to sign them up and just kind of forget about them. And I didn't see things that way. I guess, I always believed that supervision is important. And I just wanted my own place. Unfortunately, I moved to the one city in the United States that already had an Anderson's Nautilus. So I was working for a chain called Nautilus Northwest, and one of their locations was going to spin off. It became available for sale. My wife, Anne-Marie, and I took part ownership of it. And about that time, I had gotten heavily involved in the super slow movement. And for those who aren't familiar with the super slow movement, it's not just about slow speed of exercise performance, but also about the environment, no distractions, no music, nothing on the walls, no plants, instructor in a tie and dress shirt, which I no longer do, by the way, because it's quite uncomfortable. But we were desirous of that kind of thing. We were very taken with it. It was a sharp contrast to the circus atmosphere that we'd seen in the gym. And the gym that we took over was indeed a circus. So we slowly converted it over. We retrofitted an entire gym. And I suffered, the protests of the people who wanted to continue with their aerobics classes and their cardio tools and some of the other things that we just wanted out of the gym. We wanted to be a pure strength training facility. We wanted to do one thing and do it better than anybody else. After the storm passed, which took about a year, we changed locations. We were in a very old building, and we've actually changed locations a couple of times, and didn't lose a client in any of our moves. I mean, we have had, other than when people move away or, run out of money, I've had people that have followed me from gym to gym since 1989. And in fact, if you walk into the lobby of Ideal Exercise, one of the first things you see is a series of plaques on the wall where we commemorate clients that have been with us 5, 10, and 15 years. And it's a lot of names. It is a lot of names. And, over the years, we've evolved our training approach from really strict, by-the-book, super slow, to getting back to some of my hit, roots, kind of the techniques, the old school Nautilus stuff. We've brought some of those things back, and it's been really productive. Our client retention rate is huge, and I really thank my wife for most of that, because I can be a little edgy or obnoxious at times, and I think she's able to come in and kind of soften the edges a little bit for people. So it's a good mix, and I'm really lucky to have her on board.
Yeah, that is awesome. I can only imagine the kind of stuff you went through, especially in the beginning, where people were doing what they do in most gyms, which is circus atmosphere is a good way to put it, to just a straight up, especially a super slow type of thing, let alone a high intensity setup. That must have been quite a transition for a lot of people.
Oh, I'll tell you, one of the first things I did, this gym had a beautiful, beautiful collection of classic Nautilus. And I went in, and as many guys do, especially the super slow guys, I took the equipment apart, took all the bushings out, low friction the machines by putting needle bearings in all the articulation points, and really got them to feel, just beautiful. And I figured that the members of the gym would really appreciate my efforts. They actually resented my efforts to upgrade the equipment. And I remember I took 8 hours once to low friction a compound leg machine. Remember the old leg extension leg press, the big monster? And I walked in my office, and I heard this horrible, horrible grinding, zipping noise. And I walked out, and sure enough, the guy in the tank top with the loud bodybuilder baggies and the gloves and the headband, I think he was wearing sunglasses, he's slamming that thing about 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I walked over and I said, hey, look, I put a lot of work into this. Could you please observe, a 5-second lifting, 5-second lowering speed? And I can't repeat what his response was. I can repeat what my response to his response was, which is, you're no longer a member of my gym. And I just threw up my hands, and Anne-Marie and I looked at one another and we said, that's it. We're converting to full personal training. That's all. And we did a unique thing. I actually wrote a letter to the state attorney general here in Washington, and I said, look, there are going to be complaints because I'm converting this gym over, but here's what I'm going to do. Anybody who's got membership time can have personal training through the length of that membership. So, we had people who were on, these 6-month for $149 specials that they had purchased before I owned the place. And I'm having to dole out 6 months of training for, essentially $0.00 in my pocket. But it was the only way we could make the business survive and get what we wanted. And had we not gone through that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today.
Wow. That is very interesting. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, fast forward to today, and you guys are just cranking them in and cranking them out with a bunch of high-intensity loving clients at this point.
Yeah, I don't know so much that they're high-intensity loving as they love the efficiency of getting in and out of the gym in under 10 minutes. Oh. Anne-Marie and I each run somewhere between 20 and 30 workouts a day, and we actually carry a waiting list to get in here to see us.
Wow.
In fact, this morning, my last client before I left for lunch drove 3.5 hours from Vancouver, Canada to come down and train with me, which he does once a week. And the gentleman's a top-level fencing coach and just loves to train hard, and there's just nobody in his area.
Wow, that is awesome. And then how about now, you mentioned the Nautilus and all the work you went through to get that the way you wanted it. Kind of give us a rundown, if you would, of of all the equipment that you have in there at this point, because I understand you have quite a bit.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a very, very smart fellow in New York named Robert Francis who told me I run High Intensity's attic, which I guess kind of used to be true. I've downsized a little bit in the last year. We've got just about every generation of Nautilus equipment represented. I think I've got at least one of every line. I've got an old rotary neck machine that's in mint condition. I have some neat retrofitted equipment. I've got an old lower back machine with a Super Slow Systems pedestal retrofit. I have some leverage machines. I adore the leverage leg press. I think it's one of the best pieces I've ever been on. And I have a line of the Nautilus Power Plus that they came out with in the 90s that really never caught on. I know Dan Riley really liked it, and that sold me. If Dan Riley likes something, I like it. So we have quite a bit of that, although throughout the years I've tried to get away from loading the barbell plates. At one point I was, loading barbell plates 10 hours a day, and you want to become the picture of overtraining. That'll do it to you. So we also have a line of next generation. I've got some Nautilus 2 ST, some Nitro. I have the Nitro leg press, which I like very much. And basically, we've got all the body parts covered. I've got a lot of single joint movements, although I prefer to use compound movements. It's just a good collection. It's everything's not all the same color because I bought them at different times, and I bought some pieces used. And I don't have any Med-X. I have at times wished I could buy Med-X equipment, but it's never worked out. And I really I find the Nautilus equipment to be great. I have a very big fondness for the pullover machine. I own 3 of them. I have a Series 3, a Power Plus, and a Next Generation. And clients ask me sometimes, well, why don't you sell one of them? There's only 2 of you in here training at one time. And, I always tell them that's like asking me to sell one of my children. That's, excuse me, Dave, I don't have any children. All I have are Nautilus machines. So that's it.
There you go. All right. Now let's say I'm coming to you. I call you, or a friend of mine at work is working out with you, getting great results. I've never worked out before, and I want to get started with you. I'm not participating in any sports, none of that kind of stuff. I just want to look better, feel better. What am I going to go through? What type of a routine or process am I going to go through as a beginner coming in and starting out at your facility?
Well, what I do with introductory workouts, I block out a pretty good chunk of my time, generally 40 minutes to an hour. The client comes in, and it's always a different dynamic depending on how they've found out about us. If they've seen us mentioned in a book, they come in assuming that we're the expert and they just want to, know what to do. If it's a referral from another client, well, that can go a couple of different ways. For example, I don't do what I call hired gun workouts, where somebody's spouse, roommate, best friend, cousin, or whomever is telling them, 10 minutes, that's nothing. And then my clients say, I'll take you down there and he'll show you a workout, you'll be passed out on the floor. I don't do that. I only work with people who really want to be here and really want to learn how to train. And they come in for an orientation. I spend about 35 minutes going over, the history of high intensity and abbreviated training, why we abbreviate the training. I tell them, it's 10 minutes because the 11th could kill you stone dead. And then I give them a pretty extensive safety orientation as to how to behave in the gym, both with regards to other clients and how we move through the gym to not distract one another, and also some important, technical discussions of things like head and neck position, how to breathe properly, the basic, avoidance of extraneous movements, and what we're looking for is part of movement speed. And I will say, although I used to be a pretty outspoken and hardcore super slow guy, what I tell clients now is, I'd like to see you train at a slow speed, but you're here to train hard, not to join a political or religious movement. Once we get that orientation done, I start everybody with, unless we have a medical detour or some other special need, I start everyone with the Big 5 workout that's represented in the book Body by Science, which consists of a leg press, a horizontal pushing, horizontal pulling, vertical pushing, vertical pulling movement. And I go ahead and jump right in and try to get the client to failure on the first workout. I think that if you try to ease people in, break them in, I think you're delaying the inevitable. They're going to have to work hard at some point anyway. I know if I can keep them breathing, keep them controlled as to head and neck position and not thrashing about in the equipment, I'm not going to kill anybody. They're going to get a good workout. And, I always say I'm like a mugger. I'm just going to beat the hell out of you and then take your money.
That is awesome. And obviously they're sticking around. You got a waiting list going and the whole deal there.
It's really a lot of fun. Average client's been with me, I think, 8 or 9 years. We get to know these people. As much as I respect the attitude of some trainers who feel like, this is a clinical relationship, you have to come see me for your exercise, and then, all right, I'll see you next week. No, I have a little bit different approach. I take my clients to ball games. We take them out to dinner. We give a lot of stuff away. We just have a good time with them. And what I tell them is, look, the actual exercise itself is brutally hard. And sometimes you don't want to come in here. You don't like it. But the experience of being at Ideal Exercise should not be unpleasant. You should feel like you want to be here, even though you don't want Anne-Marie to put you in that leg press. Or worse yet, the true squat. She puts people in the true squat, just smokes them. And it's really a good relationship we have with them. And we're all over the place as to people's ability to train hard. And if you walk in here on any, given day in the summer, you might see an athlete that you just watched on TV during the basketball season, and then you might see me take in an 80-year-old lady after that. You'll see everything. We train everything from 8-year-old kids to 90-year-olds.
Well, that is awesome. And obviously that makes it a little more fun and a little bit easier for you to motivate yourself to work these long hours by developing these relationships with the clients. Yeah.
Somebody asked me yesterday, well, don't you ever get bored? And I said, no, I don't. I must be simple-minded because I just simply don't get bored with it. It's what I do, and I like it.
Yeah, that's a perfect situation. And let's say I'm coming to you again for training, but I'm a little bit different of a person now. I'm a guy who's been, I want big muscles and so forth. I've been working out for a couple of years with a standard muscle and fitness type of deal, a split routine, multiple sets, 4, 5, 6 days a week, whatever it is. And I'm at a point where I'm not happy with the results. I'm confused. I don't know why it's not working for me, and it works for everybody else in the bodybuilding magazine. First of all, do you get those type of people? And if so, how do you handle that situation where you're going to take them from all of that tons of volume down to a 10-minute deal?
Yeah, over the years, I've seen a little bit of that. Well, more than a little bit. The reality is, and if I get somebody who's in that situation, I try to get them to understand that, first of all, the bodybuilding magazines are supplement catalogs, and they're largely works of fiction, and it's not even very good fiction, because these exercise routines that are offered aren't really routines, they're lists of exercises. If you walk into a Gold's Gym and you take a look around, and actually, I can't recall the name of the gentleman who did this study, but I read a piece of research, a study that was done years ago, where the average workout time, say of 90 minutes to 2 hours that a gym-going trainee was undertaking, really only contained about 12 minutes of actual hard work. And my feeling on that, and I try to get the guy that's been with a multiple set, multiple day approach to understand that, look, I'm just going to distill it down to the 12 minutes for you. We're going to get to the good stuff. And I also congratulate them on the willingness to commit to a program that requires such a big time commitment. And, the other thing that I leave everybody with, obviously I feel like what I do is the best way to train. But I often say this, it offends my libertarian sensibilities to prohibit you from doing things you like. So if you want to be in the gym every day, there are a lot of places around here that cater to that. There are 5 of them within 400 yards of my front door, and we don't compete with one another. Having said that, I really hammer on the issue of recovery. I try to make the prospective client understand that it's not what happens in the gym, it's what happens as a result of what happened in the gym that we're after. And this is just a stimulus. Doug McGuff uses a tanning bed analogy. The tanning bed industry has distilled the key stimulus down to the elemental force that produces a tan, and, it's very efficient. You go in, you lay in the thing for, I don't know, I've never used a tanning bed. I guess you get in there for 10 minutes or whatever, and then you're out about your day. So if your goal is not to, make weights go up and down as a surrogate for sport or other activity, and you can get behind the idea that this is just a stimulus, then Ideal Exercise is the place for you. I will admit that when I get those types of people, I do feel like I have to overly hammer them a little bit on the first workout because they really do have to feel it. And often, that's where some other techniques might sneak in, like, if a guy wants big muscles, well, I know what he means by that. He wants big arms. So I may put him through 4 compound movements and then hit him with multi-biceps and then isometrics and then negative chin-ups and, let him feel what can be done in about 2.5 minutes of work. But really, if I can get them to understand what we're trying to do here, a couple of compound movements, 3 to 5 compound movements, push them hard, get to failure, then get out of the gym, forget about it, go enjoy your life. Don't go read bodybuilding magazines. My good friend Bill DeSimone says, a lot of guys have very time-efficient, abbreviated programs, and then as soon as they're done with their time-efficient, abbreviated program, they go spend the next 3 hours on the internet or with their face in a muscle magazine thinking about training. Well, What's the point of that? Go to the library. Go do something else.
Very good. Yeah, and your point is that's huge. Where these guys that are working out for 60, 90 minutes, even 2 hours, I mean, if you just take out all the sitting on the machine and texting their friend and talking to somebody and waiting for their 2 training partners to go, and you took all that out, I'm sure that your assessment is accurate. It's probably about 12 minutes of actual hard work.
And the hard work's the key. That's the key.
That's it. That's awesome. And I know what you mean about 2 things. It's you got to take extra time and really break it down for these people, which they have never probably heard before. They wouldn't be training that way. And you got to kind of let them have it on the first workout so they know.
Yeah, you got to get at them a little bit. Yeah. And, a lot of these folks that have been training multiple days and doing these long routines, they've never given a thought to the issue of progression. They don't know if they're getting stronger. They're going in the gym and essentially just getting some dumbbells and making sure the numbers on them match, and then looking around the room, and that guy's pretty big. Look what he's doing. And he's doing alternate dumbbell curls. Well, I'll do alternate dumbbell curls. Well, wait, that guy's even bigger. He's doing incline dumbbell curls. Maybe I ought to do that. And there's really no thought to it. There's really no thought to it at all. And once you get somebody to understand, look, wouldn't you rather come into the gym and train hard and have 5 big movements that we're able to add somewhere between 1.25 and 5 pounds a week for the next year, and then you go back down to Gold's Gym, you ask the biggest guy in the gym, hey, did you put 50 pounds on any of your major exercises this year? The guy probably just look at you and stare blankly and walk away.
Yeah, exactly. And he probably wouldn't know if he has or not because he's not writing anything down. So
no,
there
very
you go.
seldom do you see a logbook kept in a commercial facility.
Yep, absolutely. Now, with your clients or in your own workouts yourself, do you kind of alluded to with the multi-set guy, you might straighten him out with some informametrics and some negative chin-ups and things like that. You're more, the clients that have been with you for a while, do you use any quote-unquote advanced high-intensity techniques, pre-exhaust or rest pause or any of this type of stuff?
I do, but there's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there in that what I try to get people to understand is as they get more advanced, they need less. And one of the first steps that I take along the ladder of progression is when you stalled out on those big 5 compound movements, what I will do is I will swap out some maybe less metabolically demanding movements, maybe some single joint stuff where you're not going to use as much resistance, where you don't have the stress spread out over large areas of the body. So, for example, your overhead press may become a lateral raise. I'll first do things like that to continue progression. But at some point, somebody's going to get advanced to the point that they just want to enjoy the efficacy of seeing what they can do with their body. And I think this is part of the popularity of things like CrossFit. I don't think CrossFit's a very good way to train, and I think a lot of what they do is flat dangerous. But there are people who are really enamored of that big metabolic hit. So, yeah, if you've been with me for a little while, every once in a while, you may come in and I just have something for you. And often, it'll be, well, look, let's do 2 cycles through of Mike Mentzer's heavy-duty split routine, where you have pullover grouped with rowing or chin-up or pull-down, and then you have, obviously chest fly. I use a 10-degree chest grouped with dips or bench presses or incline presses. And it's refreshing to the client, although it's, in my opinion, probably not as necessary. I will tell you this, one use that I have for pre-exhaustion is quite often I have college athletes return to me with injuries. And several years ago, I had a top-level softball player who's now coaching at Arizona State University, came to me having had hand surgery. And, we did all the things to bypass the hands-free workout, rowing torso, 10-degree chest, pullover, that type of thing. But I knew that she needed to be able to get back into those compound upper body movements. And pre-exhaustion allowed us to kind of, fly under the radar, so to speak, to fly under the threshold of resistance on, say, a bench press that irritated that injured site, but still allowed her to work back into using that movement. And part of it is I want these kids to stay skilled at using those compound movements. Although there's not a tremendous amount of skill with a machine, you still want to maintain that feel. So for her, I was able to go, pull over a 10-degree chest, and by that point, your chest is pretty well wiped out, and we could use a moderate resistance on a bench press and actually get something out of it without aggravating that injury. And I think that's a valuable use of pre-exhaustion, much, much more so than any bodybuilding application. As to the other techniques, rest pause. We have clients that respond very well to it. Static contractions, John Little is a friend of mine, and I've actually been experimenting with a protocol that he's just come out with called the Max Pyramid Protocol, which involves a series of ascending and descending resistance, 20-second holds with varying resistance up and down the ladder at the mid-range or maximum moment arm for each muscle group. And it's an interesting protocol. For people who want to know more about it, bodybyscience.net has an article about it. Sorry, Dave, I hate to plug anybody else's site, but that's where it is.
Perfectly all right.
It's the approach is kind of a confluence of his ideas on static contraction and Bill DeSimone, who to my mind is the foremost expert on biomechanics on the planet. His ideas about manipulating the moment arm and how to get maximal loading with minimum wear and tear on the joints. And it's been a very, very interesting little experiment that we're doing here. And the client's satisfaction is huge. And I do consider that an advanced technique. That's not something I put grandma in when she comes in for her first workout, because I would like her to come back. I want the rank beginner to just learn how to train hard.
That's very interesting. How long have you been using that static technique with your clients? I mean, are you able to tell yet the effectiveness of it, or what kind of results they're getting, or are you just kind of getting going with them on that type of thing, the John Little technique?
Well, he had told me about it a couple of months ago, and I immediately had a couple of clients come to mind that I kind of the usual suspects, my people who are very coordinated, very disciplined, motivated, and really like to work hard. They really relish the feeling of working hard. And I, to the point where I'm sometimes reminding them, this isn't here about, we're not here to feel that we've worked hard. We're here to, actually progress. But I called out a few clients, and in one example, a young lady that's been with me for 5 or 6 years, I used the Max Pyramid Protocol on her leg press, and I only used it on the leg press every 4th workout. So she would see it maybe 3 times a month. This morning she came in, I put her on leg press for her standard, single set to failure, slow repetitions, keeping track of time under load, and the time under load at an increased resistance from her last workout. I believe we increased it by 2.5 pounds. The time under load increased by something like 38 seconds. She got off the machine and she said, "Did you lighten the weight? What? Well, my legs are shaky, but did you lighten?" I said, "No, look at it. You've made great progress." And now I don't know if that's going to continue. I feel like with techniques like that, the specter of overtraining is ever present. So I do things like that very sparingly, but it is interesting to experiment with, and it is interesting to see how different people respond.
It is very interesting. I was talking to Fred Fornicola recently. I don't know if you know Fred or not, but
I spoke to Fred for the first time just this morning.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. I just got to know him just in the last few months, and I know he's very involved with that. He really loves that type of protocol, that static contraction thing, and
we were discussing some things that we do with the leverage equipment that he and I have in common. That I what do they say? Great minds think alike, or in this case, maybe it's twisted minds. But Fred has been using a protocol where he does static holds at different positions in the leverage leg press because that machine's got such a great ascending strength curve. And I've been doing the same thing, and our individual applications are slightly different, but it was great to hear him talk about how he does it and his perspective on how he deals with clients and with his place. And Fred's a very bright guy, and I hope I get to talk to him some more.
Yeah, he's the thing that he said, somebody in his area showed it to him, some old timer Yoda type guy with a bunch of wisdom that, guys like you and I have never heard of. And he's got a lot of injury problems, and this type of training enabled him personally to work around some of his injuries and do things that he hasn't been able to do for years.
Yeah, I'm guessing that he got some of that from Joel Waldman, who's in Belmar, New Jersey. Anybody who's never, if you've seen Joel, I don't need to explain this. He may have the largest, most muscular neck on any human being anywhere on the planet. In fact, on Ellington Darden's website, there's a photo of Joel's sternocleidomastoid musculature, and it looks like two thighs on the front of his neck. He's an old timer. He's a great guy. And I was very jealous to find out that he took up the sport of long drive in golf and hit a golf ball something like 415 yards, which is, the golf equivalent of an 800-pound squat. Super guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it just becomes fun when you start to crisscross with these people and find out what different guys are doing and so forth, and try it out. And like you said, maybe twisted minds think alike, because we all like to experiment with all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
Definitely. A little off the training path here, but not totally off of it. I was wondering what your views are on the subject of nutrition and its role in a fitness program.
Well, that is a little bit of a tough one. Here is how I approach that with clients. What I explain to them is, first of all, I don't really want to discuss food supplements because I don't want the liability of telling somebody what to ingest. Secondly, I become very, very impatient when a dietitian or a nutritionist provides exercise advice. So as a professional courtesy, nutrition is outside my scope of practice. Okay, that being said, I tell clients, but for me personally, what I favor is a hunter-gatherer diet. I started, they call it the paleo diet. I started with a paleo diet about 18 months ago on the advice of Dr. Doug McGuff, and I did it primarily to get some relief from some arthritis I have from old injuries. And it worked fairly well for that, along with vitamin D3 supplementation and some high-dose fish oil. And again, I'm only telling the client what I do, not what they should do. Your mileage may vary. But I found it to be very helpful, and I've also dropped about 30 pounds of unwanted fat, which is a tremendous side benefit. And that's, meat, leaves, and berries, the hunter-gatherer approach. But I know there are a lot of approaches to diet that work just fine. I've seen the zone diet work. I've seen the very low-carbohydrate diets work. I've seen low-fat diets work. Everybody knows Ellington Darden, promotes a 60% carbohydrate diet, and we've seen those work. I tend to think that with the life sciences, it's kind of a moving target or a bell curve. And there may be little tweaks or variations that are going to work for, different people differently. So, it's like Ted Nugent, who's a famous hunter as well as rock musician, once said he had a vegetarian in his band, and somebody said, well, how do you handle the fact that he doesn't eat meat? Ted said, well, meat's just not on his menu. It's not an issue. So I have kind of a soft approach to advising nutrition. I'm fearless about telling clients, look, you need to eat less if you're too fat. I've been through it in my life. I've been through periods of time when I needed to eat less. Clients sometimes need to, you got to figure out some way to control your intake, but how you do that is really an individual matter.
Very good. Very interesting. And congratulations on losing 30 pounds of fat. That's quite a chunk.
Yeah. I was a 300-pound offensive lineman. And when you've been a 300-pound offensive lineman, it's not easy to, I'm about 215 today. And,
wow.
But it's taken me 20 years to whittle that off. And I've had people throughout the years ask me, well, don't you think that hurts your credibility as a trainer a little bit? And no, I don't. I know what I'm doing. And that it is what it is.
Yeah. There you go.
But it does feel good to be lighter. It's easier on the knees, I can assure you.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that one for sure. All right, well, Greg, I got to tell you, you've given us some fantastic information. I've been as I've been listening to you, I got the little sheet I got in front of me here with your phone number on it is now full of notes that I've been taking as you've been talking. So this has really been fun for me. I'm going to hit you with a curveball. You didn't know I was going to ask this question, but I forgot to get it in there, and I ask everybody this. Based on your history with your gym, you may not have an answer for this, but I always ask people what the funniest thing they've seen in the gym is, and usually they come up with some weirdo technique that somebody was using that just made their jaw drop. Now, you don't get that in your facility, but I wonder if you have any funny stories.
I got two for you.
Okay, good.
I got two. The one from my facility, men being what they are, being the kind of animals that we are, we like to be the best. We're competitive, and we like to one-up one another. I often think that's ridiculous. But, we're all about who's making their claw marks higher in the tree. And when I started talking to people about, I've always been a real low-volume, infrequent kind of guy. I mean, that's how I've always trained, and that's what I've always taught. Well, as some of my guys started to absorb the message that as you get more and more advanced, you do less and less and less, instead of I bench press 400 pounds, what do you do? Well, I squatted 600 for 14 yesterday, and filling the air with sounds about these fantastic feats that may or may not have happened. I had a couple of guys sitting in my lobby, and one says to the other one, well, I'm so advanced, I only leg press once every 3 weeks. Which may or may not have been true. I don't recall at the time. And the guy he was speaking to said, I do pre-exhaustion for my upper back, but only about 4 times a year. And a friend of mine who happened to be sitting in my office heard this going on, and he walked out and he said, guys, you know what? Greg only allows me to walk up to the leg press about every 6 months, and I don't get on it. I only glance at it briefly so as not to overtrain. And he walked out of the room, and these two guys just looked like they'd been slapped in the face. I couldn't come out of the office for 10 minutes. I was laughing so hard.
Oh, man. He was the winner.
He was the winner. The funniest thing that I have ever seen in a gym, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and I trained off and on at a somewhat famous gym. Actually, Brooks Kubik, the author of Dinosaur Training, used to train there as well. A place called Waltz Olympic Gym. It was in the Mid-City Mall in a really seedy section of Louisville. The place was just a black iron pit. It was just a powerlifting, hardcore, a few bodybuilders, but mostly powerlifters, big, strong guys. Great environment. Walt had put in a nice line of Nautilus equipment. He had some good leverage machines. And I think the place had 6 squat racks. It was incredible. It was a tiny little gym. It's probably about the size of my personal training center now, but crammed into the basement of the strip mall. And I was in there one afternoon, and I had just finished, probably squat, stiff-legged deadlift, and incline press, and I'm ready to get out the door. And the radio was playing, and the very, very beautiful song by the Beatles, Hey Jude, was playing. And as I walked out the door, it occurred to me that all these big 300-pound monsters were between their sets, and they were all sitting on benches singing along with the chorus. You know the chorus, na, 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 na. Oh, sorry, I'll spare you my singing. Absolutely hilarious. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen in a gym.
And that sounds like it would be on a credit card commercial or something. All these big guys sitting around humming or singing that melody there. That must have been a riot.
So that happened today. Somebody'd whip a cell phone out, and that thing would be on YouTube within 30 seconds.
No question, and it would have 1 million views by next week. That is very true.
Yeah, indelibly burned into my memory.
Wow, I bet. That is awesome. Well, Greg, I really appreciate it. Like I just said a minute ago, all the information you've given us. This for me, and I'm sure for all the listeners, has been an absolutely fascinating interview. And as far as people who may live in your area or people who may want to come to your area or get some more information from you, or I don't know if you have any products available or anything like that, but if they want more Greg Anderson, how would they go about doing that?
Well, the product is hard training, and they can certainly call us at the gym, call myself or Anne-Marie, 206-364-9944. The website, which is going to be undergoing some construction here pretty soon, is seattlehit.com. And, we love out-of-town visitors. I just had a fitness blogger from New York out here for a couple of workouts. And we've actually had people come from as far away as Bombay, India to train with us. Love having out-of-town guests. So anybody who wants to come and hang out at Seattle's Home for HIIT, you're more than welcome.
Well, I am definitely going to put that on my own list because my wife and I have never been to the Pacific Northwest, and that is on our big list of things to do, is to get out there. And obviously, your facility will be right in there with that one. So
we'd love to have you. It'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great for me as well. Any parting comments you might have for the listeners before I let you go?
Parting comments for the listeners. I would advise the listeners to train hard, eat well, and remember that no matter where you go, there you are.
There we go. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks a million, Greg. And once again, I really appreciate it. An absolutely fascinating interview.
Thank you, Dave. It's been fun.
All right. This is Dave Durrell from HighIntensityNation.com and HighIntensityMuscleBuilding.com, and we will talk to everybody soon with another high-intensity interview.
Hey guys, it's Lawrence again. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I certainly did. For the show notes, please go to corporatewarrior.co/Greg Anderson. And for all podcasts, please go to corporatewarrior.co/podcast. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to improve health, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful high-intensity strength training business. Check out corporatewarrior.co. corporatewarrior.co.